Hello and welcome to the first of two Women in AI/ML series. Today I'm joined by Susanne, who's going to share her story about what she currently does, how she got into it, and any tips that she might have for other women or just any interested parties in the AI/ML field. I'm Cyndey Stude, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, Sydney. Good morning. I'm super excited to be here at AWS On Air. Really an honor and fun to have this conversation with you today. We don't get a lot of moments of reflection, so it's really nice to be able to take that time for myself too, as much as hopefully this is helpful for the folks listening. Um, like you said, I'll talk a little bit about who I am. So, my name is Susanne Seitinger, and I am currently the director of AI/ML product marketing here at AWS. And if you have to break down what product marketing really entails, it's all about connecting the dots for people on what technology can do for them. So, it's really the heart of product marketing is around creating a compelling storyline for people to understand how a particular product is going to transform what they're trying to do, how it's going to help them, how it's really going to be a part of their actual business activities, and really think about how, in our case, obviously, AI/ML tools can transform how they think about their business, how they think about solving problems, and really ultimately how they can then serve their customers better as a result of the technologies that we offer. And so, where we really offer a huge breadth of tools and techniques and technologies. And so our job is to help folks understand all that and find the right solution for the problem they're trying to solve. And in our case with AI/ML, which is such an early, nascent field and growing field, a lot of our job is also to help folks understand what's under the covers, to demystify it, to make it less daunting, and have people really feel like, oh, yeah, this is something I could apply today. This isn't something, mysterious that I need, 10 new engineers for. I can really get started with this now, and I can start thinking about how data and the insights I can derive from data can really help me today in my job.
That's
So
really neat.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and talking about technology is really fun because it starts to help you see what the benefits can be of using technology in smart ways and in ways that really matter to people. And I guess that's really how I got into technology in the first place. I never really was interested in technology just for technology's sake. My background is in architecture and urban planning. I'm a trained city planner, and was at MIT when I was doing that. And it was really the beginning of a lot of the smart cities conversations. Maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago now, and it was the beginning of those conversations about how technology would transform our cities and the ways we live together, the way government serves us, the way government serves citizens. And I, as a city planner, I was like, wow, this stuff is cool. We have to apply this to our problems. We have to think about how this is going to help enhance our quality of life in cities. And I realized that I had to keep talking to technologists and ask them for help and understanding how things would work. And, it felt like it was better to be on the other side, or at least be part of the conversation and be able to also shape those technologies and not just be a recipient of them, and also not have to accept the status quo. So really, getting an understanding of the fact that, we shape the tools we use, and those folks who really understand the needs are often best equipped to set requirements and think of ways that technology can be used, even more so than the folks who are, obviously you need that partnership with really adept engineers and technologists. But oftentimes I find that intersection is where it gets super exciting, right? When you have a compelling need, a compelling problem, and then you work together and you come up with new and novel solutions. And I was really fortunate to get to work on topics related to shared vehicle systems at a time when that was still really early days, and think about how that might transform urban environments, or think about what tools people would use. Now, so, suddenly folks were carrying computers around in their pockets, and you could think about, okay, well, if I know all this stuff, how would I then change my interaction with my community? How would would I know that there's all these great folks living around me, and how would that create better connection? Not just isolation, right? Often we focus on how the technology takes us out of place, but it actually can also bring us back into place. And so, it was a really exciting time, and it got me hooked on thinking about how technology is something that we really need, as many people as possible to be thinking about in order to make it work for society and for people across the board. And it was just it was exciting time, and I'm really appreciative of kind of the way I got into technology, because it was through the lens of problem solving. It was through the lens of trying to push the boundaries of what was already there, and really not sort of sticking with the accepted level of service, if you will, but saying, hey, what can we do differently? How could we turn this on its head? And there are a lot of things that we're starting, that we take for granted now. Everything from maps and wayfinding tools to Uber, to all these other tools that we just use, and that are really reliant on a lot of data and understanding and capture of data, and responsible use and application of data. And a lot of the conversations that started then around cities, for example, creating policies for how to develop and deploy IoT systems, and what they would do with the data, and who would own the data, and how they would manage it. And all these questions were so interesting and compelling at the time. And I was really lucky to be in a place where folks were interested in making those technologies as accessible as possible. There was at the Media Lab, we had a research group that still is called the Lifelong Kindergarten Group, and it really speaks to this idea, right, of um, self-directed play and exploration. And I think it's such a thing, sometimes it really gets squashed over time, right? We don't always take time as grown-ups in particular to just explore. And one of the concepts that they talked about there was a lot about, it was kind of a group that had come down I guess, through history from Seymour Papert and the early days of kind of making computing accessible to kids, and Mitch Resnick continued it, and he talked a lot about kind of low floors and high ceilings. So getting in really easily, but then having really no boundaries on how far you can go. And then Mitch sort of expanded it to talk about wide walls too, and thinking about how you actually make as many options as possible for people to start to access technology and think about using it. And the more we see these tools, the more we see technologies being designed and built, I think the more those metaphors are important, because it really is about making as many ways into using and applying technology as possible, and then not really limiting people, but creating systems that allow them to continue to create and shape and reformat, as they learn more, and as they have more expertise, and as they understand more about what they're trying to achieve, and maybe what the ramifications are. So this idea of iterating and therefore progressing is really, really important in this space. And the speed at which things are happening requires that, because what's true today is not going to be true 2 years from now. And so that really makes it so dynamic and exciting, and I think also important for as many people as possible to be involved in it, so that we end up with tools and systems that really reflect everyone's needs and requirements and challenges.
That's super cool. What you said about the needs 2 years ago are so different from today. I mean, yeah, but if you think about it, 2 years ago, technology was so different, and largely in part to this AI/ML, the new things. And I won't pretend to understand a lot of it, but it's such an interesting field. And that's one reason I'm so happy to have this series, is because demystifying that and talking about that is so valuable, because it's such a it's a big part of our future, right? With the devices that we use.
I mean, and we're already using it, right? You're using it when you're unlocking your phone, when you're using the tools to, I don't know, find recommendations for different places to go, or places to eat. I mean, you're
Yeah,
using these
that's
tools
important.
already as in your everyday life. And I think it's really important that folks are very consciously thinking about, at least at some point, what it is that interaction actually implies and what's behind the scenes. I mean, there's some really important things behind the scenes that are happening, and it's good to have an awareness for that, and it's good to be aware that you can potentially come up with your own ideas on how to apply and think about these tools, and especially if you see a need or a problem or something that you want to address, then you want to be able to actually take action. And I think that's really important, and maybe was really true also in the earlier days of computing. I mean, now things can sometimes, it's almost too easy sometimes. So how do you make sure people realize that it's not just a fixed thing? You can always come in with your ideas and become a part of it.
Yeah, that's super neat. And so I know you touched on it a little bit, but would you mind sharing your story just a little deeper on like how you got into this?
I mean, it really, I mean, like I said, it really is about not wanting to just be a consumer of technology and not just wanting to be kind of accepting of the way things are, but really having the ability to set my own requirements and say, well, and push back a little harder on, technologists and say, well, I really think, it doesn't have to be this way. And that might have to do with things like, I worked a lot on large scale display technology and how to think about how that would kind of portray different content in urban environments. And there were a lot of assumptions around how that would be used and why. And, why does it have to be used that way? Why can't it be lower resolution? Why can't it be more distributed? Why can't the content be more democratized? Why can't, there's all these things around how technologies are applied that you can question and think about. And so that's really what drove me into becoming more of, an actual technologist on the other side of the fence, and being not just a recipient of tools and techniques, but actually shaping them and actively trying to design my own approaches to some of these questions and problems.
That's super neat. Wow. So, okay. So, if you had to give any tips to
Mhm.
anyone watching that, maybe they're interested about getting into AI/ML, maybe they're interested in tech in general. Do you have any tips that you would share with those people?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think the big thing is not to be afraid. I think sometimes it can feel like, especially like I said today, where things are so packaged sometimes, you're like, oh, well, I could never change that. That's just how it is. And I think the idea that you can change things, that you can have a voice, and that you can, do your own thing. So to really not be afraid of it and not think of it as a monolithic thing, I think that's really, really important. So I would just encourage everyone, to not be afraid of getting into technology, period. Like it's not something that's separate. It's, think about how much technology is already part of your life. And then, apply that to your own sort of career thoughts or things you want to do. So you can get into technology today. There's really nothing holding you back. So be fearless about it. Um, I think the other big thing is pick topics that you care about. For me, is transforming urban environments and helping to create better quality of life in cities. That's what got me excited about technology, and that's how I started. So what is that thing for you? What is that thing that you care about so much? And then think about what role technology could play. That doesn't mean, solving a problem that doesn't need, throwing technology at something that doesn't need it, but it does mean making sure you're thinking about all the tools out there today. And technology is a huge resource, whether it's AI/ML tools or whether it's IoT or sensor or whatever it is. Like, think about how you can address those things you care about most, leveraging some of these technologies and tools. Um, and then I think finally it's exploration. So there are tools like SageMaker Canvas that really let you test out what an AI ML model, an ML model can do. And so, just try it. Like what do you have to lose, right? I think that's really important to kind of approach it with that sense of I need to explore a little bit in order to get a sense of what's going on. So I would say fearlessness, care about what it is that you're trying to solve, and explore. Those would be my three tips for folks who are thinking about getting into tech and into AI/ML.
That's so cool. I love the fearless part because there's such a or there can be, at least for me, when I'll just speak from my own experience. When I first started learning about tech things, I primarily I'm like programmer, builder, that kind of thing. But it was so intimidating at first because I didn't know what I didn't know, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. But it doesn't take long to just research and find out, okay, what's the first step? And then from there, I promise you, there are a million rabbit holes. You'll be like, oh, this is interesting. And you can follow that. And then eventually you'll be like, oh, I really like this certain field and this specific thing. Let me get certifications and job or apply for jobs through this. So
totally.
that's just so cool. The fearlessness
Yeah.
part. I love that. Um, awesome. Well, thank you for joining
You're
today
welcome.
and sharing your story and your awesome tips just from the wisdom of being in this field. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, Sydney. I really appreciate it and would love to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.